There we go. I thought my co-panelists were going to have slides, so I was trying to keep up with the Joneses, but now I'm the odd person out here. So I come from a perspective, I hope the room will stay with me, but a perspective that thinks most interests in society are class interests. And that goes for environmental interests. And what I want to talk about today is I think there's a sort of class base for environmental politics, and it comes out of a specific class formation. Many on the internet refer to this as the professional managerial class. I'll just call it the professional class. We could further specify it as a highly educated set of knowledge workers. You know, we're talking about scientists, journalists, NGO staffers, government workers, just to name a few. So I don't have a lot of time, but I want to see if I can make 4 points today about this class. First, let's see. So this class represents a minority of the population. And so therefore, I mean, this links up with what you were saying, Jason, which it doesn't in itself form the basis for a kind of majoritarian political coalition. Just to give this common statistic that people don't often think about, but about 62% of Americans don't have a college degree. So if, you know, that's a majority of people aren't educated and aren't in this class. This has broader political implications. What Thomas Piketty has kind of called the Brahmin left, this sort of shift in the base of center-left parties, parties that used to be the working class parties around the world, have now shifted to this kind of base of highly educated, affluent voters. And Rui Teixeira, who I think is here, and many others have shown that these parties of the sort of professional classes are now hemorrhaging working class support, as we saw in Europe just a couple weeks ago. This to me starkly reveals environmentalism's increasingly dismal political prospects. Second point, the professional class project is all about using credentials to carve out advantages in the labor market. Thus, they fiercely believe in meritocracy and that their material position is due to being smart and smartness. And thus, the class interests sort of align with environmentalism. It's really about being smart, right? It's about believing, it's sort of centering the politics around knowledge. It's about believing the science and castigating those who would deny the science. And obviously, that you might recall, we had a March for Science, right? And that could be seen as a kind of mass action of the professional class. They also think that they can, their class interests also align with making these kind of smart, technocratic policy fixes, like carbon pricing, right? And they really think that these policies are so smart that they can kind of win over policymakers with the brute force of logic. And so the Citizens Climate Lobby, who you may know, sort of designed this carbon fee and dividend policy. Literally, one of their slogans is, "We are going to outsmart climate change." And so they don't think much about how to form policies that might have mass appeal or be popular, but they just think they're so damn rational that they will be implemented, right? Okay, third point. Because they tend to be materially comfortable and middle class, they have what I refer to as carbon guilt. They narcissistically think that they're the ones causing climate change, and thus they promote what I would also call sort of a politics of less, that focuses on reductions in consumption, that focuses on degrowth. That would really appear bizarre, and it's unclear how it's going to appeal to the larger majority of US society that is really struggling materially to just meet their basic needs for healthcare and housing and food and all the rest. Fourth, now I think apart from engineers, these knowledge workers are profoundly separated from material production and especially industrial production. As such, they often display ignorance over how these industrial systems actually work. I don't think I have to tell this crowd about their enthusiasm for a 100% renewable grid, despite, I think Ted said last night that I think crazy was the word, I don't know. But many more radical degrowth variants, really, I would say, because of the separation from kind of like the industrial nature of the world, subscribe to a really kind of full-on anti-industrial type of politics. It's not only like their activism is not only like seeking to shut down industrial stuff, but they also just imagine a future of a kind of anti-industrial or post-industrial society that would be based on small-scale agriculture and artisanal production. I feel bad, but I've in print joked about this guy on the right here who has a PhD in industrial ecology, but is also a degrowth activist, and he toured around France with a donkey to promote the good word of degrowth. So, okay. I do feel bad for the guy. I've never met him. But the most important thing, the most important thing is this separation from industrial production means the environmental professional class reliably alienates and disgusts the actually existing industrial working class. That is the people who still work with their hands and not their heads, right? And again, this is not just an environmental problem, but it's a political problem writ large, because as we've heard from other people that are at this conference, there's this processes of educational polarization that are happening politically right now, where basically industrial working class communities are abandoning these center-left parties and voting for the right in droves. But for our environmental challenges, this is disastrous, right? Climate change is, I think, at its core, an industrial problem. And so people are finally waking up to the fact that it's really not just about blocking all the bad fossil fuel stuff, but it's about building whole new worlds of infrastructure, whole new industrial infrastructural systems. And obviously, Ezra Klein talks like we need to have this now liberalism that builds. But we have to think about a politics of building needs the builders, right? It needs the actual workers that are going to do the building. And as, did I skip this? Yeah, these are the builders. Lee Phillips wrote in the BTI Journal, it's these industrial workers that have the skills, the know-how, the knowledge to actually understand what we need to do to decarbonize the grid, for instance. And so these are going to have to be the unions that represent these workers, and the workers themselves, they're going to have to be at the center of a successful environmental climate coalition. Yet again, environmentalists are not only culturally and geographically isolated from such workers, they sometimes imply that these workers are actually the enemy, actually. They say they're in bed with the fossil fuel industry, and there's this concept that I won't bore you with, but it's very hot in my field right now, and it's called the imperial mode of living. And it's about how working class people in the global north sort of live these imperial lives that are destroying the global south in all these ways. So in conclusion, I see I'm out of time, I'm sorry. Environmentalism is a class interest, and it's a class interest bound for continued political failure unless we really start rethinking what and who environmentalism is for. Thanks.